welcome to New Stripe City, a YouTube channel for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and today I'm going to be conducting the Baltimore Ravens 2019 season preview. I've done this for other teams. Be sure to check out those videos, but today we're talking about the Baltimore Ravens. And first, starting off with the key additions: safety Earl Thomas, Mark Ingram at running back, wide receiver Marquise Brown, edge Jalen Ferguson, wide receiver Miles Boykin, and running back Justice Hill. They had some major losses this offseason, starting with C.J. Mosley, the linebacker, Terrell Suggs. They also lost safety Eric Weddle. You look at some of the other guys like Zadarius Smith, wide receivers Jonathan Brown, as well as Michael Crabtree, and of course, Joe Flacco. So the Ravens start off this season with a lot of losses, and so they started off the offseason in free agency, and I'm going to give them a B-, primarily because Earl Thomas was just a huge signing for me. I think that he saved this grade, in my opinion, from being a C. I think that he's an upgrade over Eric Weddle, and he's probably the most elite ball hawking safety they've had since Eric Reed. Outside of that, they also signed Mark Ingram. I think that was very solid. And I can't help but feel like they should have used some of that money to possibly help bolster that wide receiver position with an established veteran. And I think if they had signed a solid veteran wide receiver, solid linebacker, or an edge rusher, I would have given them close to an A-, I think, in free agency. But them not doing that is the reason behind the B-. So next, we can shift gears to the Baltimore Ravens 2019 NFL draft grade. And I have to give them a C+. And I think that this Ravens draft, in my opinion, mirrors the Bengals draft from 2016, in which the Bengals went after speed. Marquise Brown, in my opinion, would be a great pick if there weren't questions surrounding Lamar Jackson's chemistry that he had with wide receiver John Brown, a wide receiver with a similar skill set. As someone who drafted John Ross with the 4.22, simply because a receiver is fast does not mean they will make an instant impact and have chemistry with the quarterback. That chemistry plays a vital role in terms of that connection. And although I like Jalen Ferguson, it doesn't seem like he's projected to see consistent snaps that you like to see from a guy that was picked in the second round. But he was my second favorite pick personally in the draft for the Ravens. Miles Boykin looks like he should honestly be playing tight end. I think he'll be a great red zone threat, but I wonder about him in the short to intermediate passing game. And although he ran a 4.42, he seems slower in terms of field speed. So sometimes 40 speed doesn't always translate into field speed. And he seems to be the wide receiver that will struggle to gain separation and needs an accurate quarterback. Outside of that, I really like the Jalen Ferguson and Justin Hill picks. Justin Hill is a guy that I can see having a ton of potential. The only thing is he's in a crowded backfield with Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards. And my main issue with the Ravens draft is just the lack of instant impact guys outside of Marquise Brown. And I also feel like they should have definitely addressed the hole left by C.J. Mosley at linebacker. Next, we're going to review some of the strengths of the Baltimore Ravens. I think it's obvious that they have, if not the best secondary in football, one of the best secondaries in football. You talk about all of the players that they have there in the addition to Earl Thomas as well. I think you also look at their offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, him coming from a background working with a running quarterback in Colin Kaepernick, working with Lamar Jackson. That's definitely a strength for them. He'll be able to help develop his game as a passer as he did for Kaepernick, but also be able to utilize his legs smartly. I think obvious strength for them is special teams, the kicker. Justin Tucker is probably arguably the best kicker in football. I don't think it's even close, honestly. You look at the run game, that's going to be another strength of this team. And I also talk about a strength being the right side of the offensive line. So I think that those are the core strengths, in my opinion, of the Baltimore Ravens. And now, since we've talked strengths, we have to talk weaknesses. For me, there are some glaring weaknesses on this team. You look at the pass rusher, with them losing Terrell Suggs and Zadarius Smith, there really isn't a guy that really stands out outside of Matt Judon that can be that guy to step up as a pass rusher. They're really just depending on a committee of Tim Williams, Bowser, and Pernell McPhee to kind of come in and take over this entire pass rush for them. And I seem to have some concerns with that because you have to have guys in there that can consistently get 8 to 10 sacks or even 6 to 7 sacks. And none of these guys are proven. You're talking about Tim Williams, who was a guy that I really liked coming out of Alabama. He's going to be instrumental into this pass rush being effective. Like in the 2019 defense in the NFL, you have to have guys that can rush the passer. I understand some people feel like a strong secondary will benefit that, but it works both ways. A consistent pass rush will help that secondary, and it will allow you to try to affect and take over a game. And if you don't have that, that's a major weakness in today's NFL. I think the second weakness is Lamar Jackson's development. For this being a guy that has to develop his game, the Ravens really didn't put him in a great situation with the weapons around him. The lack of talent at wide receiver, and I just feel like the chemistry and the types that they pick do not fit his skill set. And I think that that will be an issue. Like, we have to see where he develops as a passer. He's a guy that I actually don't feel like is a horrible passer. I think he can make the short to intermediate passes. But the thing that scares me is, where is that deep ball accuracy? Can he make those passes? Teams are going to try to load the box on this team, and they're going to try to force this team into third and longs, and he's going to have to prove that he can make those passes with accuracy, with touch, and be able to make those plays. The unproven inside linebackers. I understand that they have Peanut and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, these guys are still unproven linebackers. You talk about him, you talk about Kenny Young. This is the first time that the Ravens have been without a star linebacker. Now, one of those guys could assume that role. I just don't have much confidence in it at this point that they can replace a guy that was a 4-time All-Pro at linebacker. You're talking about the heart of the defense, the guy that's able to create audibles and read offenses and adjust. That's going to be the other side of it, that one of these younger guys who don't have much experience are going to be in charge with, and that is a huge concern for me. A linebacker sets the tone for your defense. And that brings me to the record. I project the Ravens to take a step back this year and finish 7-9. Now, before you crucify me, let me explain exactly why. This Ravens season simply hangs on the shoulders of Lamar Jackson's development as a quarterback. And I actually am a Lamar Jackson fan. I've watched him since college, and I believe that he's a decent passer in the short to intermediate throws, but he has to take that next step into becoming not an elite passer, but an above average passer. He needs to be at an Andy Dalton level in order for this team to take that next step. But two things that worry me with him is the lack of talent and chemistry in his wide receiver core, as well as his health, right? Although he's a smart runner, he's able to evade most direct hits, he still suffered an ankle injury last season. So things like that, hamstring tweaks and things of that nature, could ultimately railroad his season. And although he was able to have success against defenses last year, they had no tape on him. And now this year, defenses will be able to adjust based off the film, and they will be guarding him differently, and he'll have to adjust to that as well. And although Marquise Brown, as I touched on earlier, is an explosive receiver, he and Boykin are both still young. And Marquise's style of play is similar to John Brown, which I said earlier, who practically disappeared when Lamar Jackson took over last year. So wide receivers like Marquise Brown and John Ross, they really work well with a strong-armed, precise quarterback, which I don't believe, in my opinion, is any of the attributes that Lamar displays. And coming from a guy who had to watch how long it took young receivers like Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones and Tyler Boyd and John Ross to develop, it's unrealistic to me to expect not only one, but two rookies to have an instant impact. I think that Willie Snead will have the most impact from their wide receiver core. But I believe that the Ravens not only have the worst receiving core in the division, they may have the worst receiving core in the NFL, and I don't think that that's a stretch at all. The running game will be great with Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and Lamar Jackson. And I think that that will have to drive this offense. The only issue with that is that offense will be one dimensional in an era where more teams are airing the ball out more and not running as much. So I don't see this being an offense that can keep up in the modern era if they simply rely on the run. It's all on Lamar being able to marry the run with the pass. And on defense, although the secondary is elite, there's huge questions and concerns at the linebacker and pass rush position with this team. This game is won in the trenches, and you can't lose guys like Terrell Suggs, even though he kind of fell off, and Zadarius Smith, your leading sack leader last year. That's going to leave a huge void. You have to have something there in order to compete in this league. And I think that they plan to use a youth movement and a committee approach, but unless Tim Williams takes that step, I don't think that Matt Judon by himself can hold this pass rush down. And I don't think enough is being said about losing C.J. Mosley. Although Ravens fans feel like he was average in coverage, this is a four-time All-Pro linebacker we're talking about. And I think that Peanut is a solid athletic linebacker with some good pass rush and run defense and extremely great coverage skills. But he's still an unproven linebacker that graded out as average on PFF. He's a guy that moved from safety to linebacker. He went undrafted as a college free agent. So if you're telling me that this guy not only had to adjust from switching from safety to linebacker, now he may be moving into the inside linebacker role that Mosley left open, I'm not confident in that. Can he make sure that guys are in the right spots? Does he have the IQ to make adjustments? These are questions that I wonder about from a guy who started out as an undrafted college free agent. Kenny Young has even more question marks. I can get behind Peanut having a chance of being a solid linebacker in this league, right? I don't think he's a C.J. Mosley, but I can get on that train, right? But I can't get behind Kenny Young. I have no reason to. And in conclusion, I think all of those factors could contribute to the Ravens going 7-9. You have to develop this one-dimensional offense. You have to get him some help at wide receiver. I just really can't believe that the Ravens literally are good with Seth Roberts starting at wide receiver for them. You got an unproven linebacker core. You've got a lack of a pass rush. These are all things that you need to be competitive in the NFL. And if they don't take that step and they don't show that they've improved significantly or they don't make moves to do that, I see them going 7-9. So as usual, hop in the comments. Ravens fans, I know you're probably going to be furious, but I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong in those comments. Let me know what I'm missing. Bengals fans, let me know your thoughts. Steelers fans, if you're in the comments, let me know what you think. And if you haven't had a chance, definitely check out my appearance with SZG Sports on YouTube. We did a roundtable with a Steelers fan, a Bengals fan, which was me, a Ravens fan, which was SCG, and a Browns fan, which was my man Quincy. And we really kind of talked about the Ravens. So be sure, if you haven't checked that out, to check it out. But as usual, I will leave you guys with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.